meeting of the Historic District Commission. So, let's do attendance, right?
Yes.
Susan Prescott, Chair.
Virginia Morris, Vice Chair. Ellie, you're next.
Oh, okay. Ellie Alessio, Select Representative. Madeline Willett.
Glenn Koppelman, Planning Board Rep.
Ralph Murphy,
And
Stan Shillette,
Stanley
There you
Schlepp.
go.
ranking member.
There you go.
That's right, I know.
So let's get right to it. First up is critical correspondence. I have a letter here from Mr. Ralph Murphy. Dear Historic District Commission, I'm submitting this letter of intent to inform the HDC regarding my appointment as a member to this commission. I have made a personal, difficult decision about being a future appointed member of this commission. My current 3-year term will expire on March 31st, 2022, and I will not be seeking, if approved, to participate in my capacity as a member with the HDC beyond that. I have enjoyed and take great honor in having served as a member, but I feel that it is now time for someone to take over my seat and offer new views and meeting contributions. Therefore, I will be resigning at the end of my term, but do wish to give notice now so that the Commission will have proper time to acquire a replacement. Thanks again to all those involved, and I hope I have served well in my HDC capacity over the years. With best regards, Ralph Murphy. And yes, you have definitely served well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you, Ralph.
Yes.
Let us know when you find your replacement.
That's what I was just going to say. You know, it's your responsibility to find it. It's your responsibility to find a replacement.
In fact, 2 replacements would be good.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to the minutes of November 9th, 2021. Are there any corrections, additions? I didn't find any. I thought they looked good.
Motion to approve.
Second?
In discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nope. Cool. Minutes are approved. Town board updates. Planning board?
Let's see. Well, it's warrant article season, and we are working on a couple of proposed changes to the zoning ordinance. Nothing significant, nothing major, but the one thing that could possibly have affected HDC, but really doesn't now, is the inclusion of a permitted use in some zones, and that being food trucks being allowed as a permitted use in the commercial zones and the industrial zone, so not in the residential zones. And Virginia attended our public hearing on that, and what would happen is that, and you can weigh in, Virginia, but what would happen is that if somebody wanted to do food truck within the historic district, it would be through a special permitting process through the select board on a case-by-case basis, but not permitted as a general right in this zone.
I had a feeling, Glenn, that the planning board had discussed this thoroughly. Of course, I hadn't been there to hear all that background, but it seems to me as though you're going to give it a really good, thoughtful first try and see if it needs tweaking afterwards.
Well, we have a lot more work to do. In fact, we've been talking about it for over a year and could not come to a consensus among the board members about how we wanted to approach it. And so what we thought was we'd take a baby step first and allow it in the commercial and the industrial zones, which means that if a food truck use is proposed in those zones, it's a commercial use essentially, and it has to go through site plan review. So it has a built-in review mechanism with the planning board. And so we thought about, a much more all-encompassing proposal, which would have, everything all laid out, for signage and traffic and everything. And we just couldn't get there. And so we thought that we could take this step of just making it a permitted use in the zones where we could do site plan review. And we'll see what happens. And as you said, we can you know, we plan to work on it more, and it'll get developed over time.
We've had some requests over the last year or two, especially since the pandemic started, where people want to be more entrepreneurial and they're becoming more popular in areas. And in some towns, there are parking lots designated where food trucks are set up and you can partake of almost anything you want.
Yes.
So,
Exeter has a pretty
they
comprehensive food truck
do,
ordinance.
yeah, they do. So it's coming.
Yep.
So we need to get prepared, I guess.
Yes.
is the bottom line.
So that's it. And on the other item for planning board, the CIP, there is nothing at this point
Okay.
to talk about.
Thank you.
I thought, one other comment about my attending that meeting was that, the discussion and, proposal before the town that you could build another structure on your property for an ADU, that you, it doesn't relate specifically to the historic district, but, my understanding is the ADU can be within your structure with all the requirements and space and all that goes with it. It could be in an existing building, and now if you had the space, you could build a building separate from your home for an ADU.
That's the way it is now, Virginia.
You may do that as,
You
It's
can,
been-
you can do that now. What we're doing for the March warrant is making it much clearer and making it so that the ordinance reads the same way as the application, which right now there are a couple of discrepancies. Because the intent is that if someone is going to do an ADU in a detached structure, it really needs to look more like an accessory type building and not a second residential home on the property.
okay, so that's what interested me for historic district, was that it needs to match the surroundings, perhaps a typical outbuilding appearance or whatever. So you could build one before, but now this says it needs to look like it fits into that environment, is that?
It did before. This makes it a little clearer, and some of that wording existed in the application, and some of it was in the ordinance, and now the intent is to make sure that they both say the same thing and have the same purpose and direction.
Okay, thank you.
I heard another thing
Oh,
about,
sorry, what?
oh, excuse me.
That's okay.
This is about the planning board. I heard that you can't have a rooster in town here. And there was a
You don't need to
petition
laugh.
that said the ordinance wasn't written up right, and there was a lot of objection. And I was wondering what was done by the planning board to make prohibition of roosters
Well,
take place.
Well, first of all, it wouldn't be what the planning board did, it would be what the town voted
the
in.
town voted it in,
Right.
that's correct.
It might have been proposed by planning board, but the voters voted it in.
Passed,
Well, I think it's gonna be a citizen's petition
there
to
is,
Well, there is.
oppose it.
there is.
So the
To
story,
overturn
the
it.
story is long from over.
But if you've had a rooster, you can keep your rooster, you just can't get a rooster.
So the rooster's
It is, the
grandfathered.
rooster
That's
is
what,
Chickens are fine, roosters are not in kind of close quarters.
in residential,
They
single
make a lot
family.
of noise, blah, blah, you know, it's a sensitive topic though, and it's amazing how that
Very
one thing
heated.
generates so much
Oh, yeah.
of a whirlwind, but it does.
To be continued.
Yes, they continue.
Because
Okay.
some people are very hungry for poultry and they wanna keep a rooster and
And
get
some
more
want it
chickens.
quiet.
Okay, Ellie, do you have anything?
Not really, we're at the end of the year, we're finalizing budgets for the warrant for March. We're finalizing items for disbursement for the ARPA fund to the COVID monies that came in from the federal government. Phil calls it our Santa Claus fund. But we're able, I think we're gonna do some really good things with it, such as internet system for the town, municipal buildings, phone system, updating this town hall will be on the agenda as well. In fact, I can turn in CIPD to have on file. And so all that stuff is coming to fruition through the next 2 weeks. Pretty much budgetary process. Fire station's on schedule, as you can see it when you drive by, so all's going well.
Nice.
Yeah, so far.
And is
Susan?
that ZBA as well? Yes.
I have a question for Ellie.
Sure, yes.
Can you remind us what the amount of the special money is?
The total amount is $674,000.
Okay.
We've received 344, about half, a little bit more than half, and then the other half will come next year. So we're not going to spend it all the next 6 months, but we have 3 years within which time frame to spend it, and we have it. So like I said, we're prioritizing what we can do in the next 6 months of the fiscal year. So
Thanks.
that's where we stand.
So, do you have anything for the ZBA?
There's a couple of things going on that re-hearings, but that's scheduled for January, so
Okay.
I'll give you an update after they hopefully come to fruition.
All right, thank you. And what about for Heritage Commission?
Well, unfortunately, I was unable to attend again this month, but I know they're working really hard on their ordinances ordinances, regulations, goals, purposes, grooming, all that, and so I haven't read those minutes yet because they're yet to come, but they're hard at work.
Which they always are.
Yep.
Excellent, thank you. So, on our agenda, the first thing up is the preliminary seminary design discussion, number 2, with Eric Schimberg and his people. There is one thing that we need to talk with you about before we start any other chat, and that is what Virginia's going to talk about.
So, Mr. Chinberg, I may or may not be in a butter to your project property. And so my functioning on this board matters to where the line is that you and the school district have come to decide what would be yours if you purchase it and what would be theirs. If I show you their survey map, can you show me where the edge of your intended purchase property is? Because if I'm in a butter, I can give my opinion but not vote. If I'm not in a butter, I can fully function.
Before I answer, can I ask you what your opinion is?
Well, you know that property line's kind of a little wobbly, so.
We can look at that for sure, but we could also just say we're fine with you having an opinion no matter what, if that's allowed.
But
She'll give you her opinion.
don't worry about the opinion part, but to vote legally, if I'm in a butter, I cannot be a voting member. Is it something as simple as, does your property propose purchase end, let's say, with the pavement in the parking lot, or does it go through the gravel walkway all the way to the fence where the practice fields are?
As far as I know, right before that little neck that attaches to the practice field, we're cutting it off at the neck. So the neck, that little neck in the practice field area, I don't think are part of property on the person. So it's most of the lower half, but none of the upper half.
Okay.
Do you want to show them the
Would it help if you looked at my map right now?
Sure.
Because that's just about where we're talking.
It's like right here.
She has a tiny little sliver of her property that abuts the.
So the site plan we put on here, is, as far as I'm aware, is more or less what we're talking about. So anything north or plan north anyways of this would not be. part of the
Let me
property.
hold my map the same way.
Rotate 90 degrees.
Oh yeah, so you're good, because I think we're cutting off here.
Okay,
So you would be on property now.
that's right. So I'm right in the corner where
Right,
the,
this is
the practice field. or
yeah,
the
'cause that's like some
field
sort of
is.
well water parcel 2 or something like that, right?
It
It's
is.
like,
The-
yeah,
the well
it's there, right, yes.
Okay,
Excellent, thank you guys.
thank you.
So, welcome back.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Passes around.
So, we're here about a month ago.
Yep.
And we've heard your comments and concerns, and we have modified the plan accordingly, in our view. And essentially, the biggest concern that you folks had represented was the building was too tall. So we have taken a full story out of it. And it's now pretty clearly kind of a subordinate building to the seminary, but still gives us marginally the scale we need to make the project work. So we're here to seek your support for our new design. The new design also includes adding some sort of streetscape buildings in the form of 6 small single-family homes that kind of help us make the economics work, and I think also make the project look better in exchange for losing essentially 20% of our building. So, Paul sent all this to you folks that were there 2 days ago, and
Yes.
we're open here and we're here for your questions or comments.
All right. Nice big pictures, very nice. Okay. First of all, just for the record, all of these discussions are just preliminary, and when it comes to the point where you'll be applying for approval, that will need to be a public hearing for new construction. So just to let you know that will, when that comes, we'll be having a public hearing. Yes, Ryan?
Susan, Eric and Paul, is there a extra copy of this that the audience could sort of share and look at?
I had just a couple of questions. I have a couple of questions that I'd like to start out with. Did you add with this new? What are we going to call this? The second rendering, right? The second idea, or
Yep.
yeah. Did you add parking spaces to make up for the ones that you're not going to be having underneath the building?
We did, but it was sort of a mix because we diminished the unit count.
Oh, okay. Oh.
And that diminished the need, so it was almost even balanced, but the site plan shows sufficient parking for this design.
Okay. All right.
I would say the prior, just to add to that, in the prior iteration, in both options, we've had more parking than we've needed because there's always been some amount that we weren't counting as sole purpose for the gym.
Okay.
So there's some spaces that are going to be, we imagine will be a shared space because obviously the gym doesn't require parking at the same hours that residents do. So we assume some of these will be flex, but there's more than enough, as Eric said, on site.
Okay. All right.
If the gym is being used at a busy time and they use up a lot of the spaces, there's still enough there for the residents of the property.
We believe there is because in our experience, we've never met a parking requirement in a municipality that is sort of represents the real need for parking, especially when it's mixed use like this. So we feel that there's plenty, and obviously during the site plan we would demonstrate that. And if we had to add some, there's plenty of land to add some, but we don't think it's necessary.
Glenn, are you talking about when we use the gym to vote?
For
Is that what you're concerned with? Yeah, and that's really where the majority of the influx of traffic would be, is when the town uses the gym for voting purposes. It's either once a year or three or four times a year, depending on state elections. So, and we could probably work something out with the Baker School across the street, or shuttle back and forth if we needed to.
And there could always be some sort of cone and barrier mechanism during those times to.
I think that's the easy thing
Yeah, it
to work
is.
out.
It is.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to mention, I liked the idea of the 6 houses. What is the plan for those? Those won't be on their own lot. Will they be sort of a condo situation, or?
I mean, I don't think that your current site plan regulations, size requirements would allow them to be on fee simple lots. So we've done lots of projects where they would, as you suggest, be single-family detached condominiums as part
Okay.
of our overall site plan.
Because I spoke with our town planner, and he said that would be that would be the direction that we'd have to go in.
Right.
To have them be part of a condo association thing.
Because otherwise they end up, you have to be doing subdivisions on this parcel, and it wouldn't work.
Right. Let me think. You will still need to do, because your 3-story building is still higher than 35 feet, you would require zoning relief for that. So we'd need to do a zone.
Do we know what the height of the proposed new building is, the redesign?
Not exactly, but if it's likely a little taller than 35, but I thought when we were here last time, we thought that the height thing was not a variance, but it was a relief from this board.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
That's
Correct.
what I
It's
thought.
From this board, I did.
Yeah, it's in your regs rather than the zoning.
So it's a special, it's a variance, it's not a variance,
It's
it's
not-
a,
yeah, it's a,
it's a waiver.
It's a waiver from
of
this
this
board,
board.
yes.
okay. So just
Because
to let you know that that's what we would have to do as well.
Because it was originally at 55, it was 55.
Yeah, so it'll be 40 or 39 or somewhere.
So it's
gonna
closer to
be-
the 35.
Yeah.
Virginia mentioned that there used to be at least 2 of the outbuildings, not really outbuildings, but buildings on that campus.
Well,
Were there 3?
Yeah, 3. There was Colquitt Hall,
Mhm.
Superintendent's Office, and
On the science.
Gilmore.
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 Gilmore Cottage.
Okay,
Gilmore
there were
Cottage.
3 separate buildings, wooden clapboard buildings, besides the science building, gymnasium, and the big seminary building.
Yeah.
But they're all gone, long since gone.
Yes.
Right, but when I looked at this with buildings there, it reminded me of a similar appearance of the way the campus used to be. That it wasn't always the seminary building, which is brick and stone, and the science building and the gymnasium. There've been white clapboard buildings, not that these are gonna be white clapboard, but I mean, they've been separate, look-like homes on that piece of property in the past. I kinda like that design. I also like the idea that it matches the streetscape of houses along in a regular way,
Church
along
Street,
those, or along one of the main streets, if you will. I thought it, I think Eric even kind of used the word camouflaged or something, the size of the large building in the middle, kind of broke up that, rather than a long stretch and then a big building. Eric, how many units were in the original proposal, plus or minus? Now you say approximately 70.
On the order of 90,
Yeah.
80 to 90. We
95
have,
is
yeah,
what
so
the
this would
last
be like,
assumption was.
might be 80.
I think 80, roughly 80, 85 here.
80 to 85. We have taken advantage of the slope to help, kind of offset sort of the unit count shrink. So that, I think, one of these sheets, number 3 shows it. The grade drops away, and rather than a parking garage down at that basement level, there would be some ability to put some units on that level. So if it was 96 before, and this is only 75% of that, we'd add a few, so we think we're in the 80s or something.
It's 3 stories above the typical grade.
That's right.
Some, what sort of below grade.
What
What
was
was
parking,
it?
that'd be like kind of garden level units.
We had parking, that was where the cafeteria was in that section.
Yeah.
Back here.
If I may just circle back on a point that Virginia was making earlier on the placement of these houses, we certainly put a couple of these on the rough footprints of where those prior historic buildings were along Main Street, and if you'll notice, we're trying to the best of our ability to reuse those historic driveways as well, to minimize some changes to curb cuts or some historic usage. And I think our intent would be to retain the historic existing fence there as well. So the basement is all trying to consider those elements which are pre-existing.
That fence is the topic of many conversations in town, so people will be glad to hear that you're going to keep it. So,
It looks like,
go ahead,
excuse me.
Stan.
It looks like a lot of parking spaces facing Main Street. I was wondering if they could put more trees to block the, because it may look like a used car lot. Some of the parking spaces. Or they could sort of blend that out with some greenery, trees.
This is very schematic. We are anticipating to have some sort of landscape buffer between the parking lot and the houses in the street. So there'll be layers from Main Street. You'll have the houses will have their front yards, there'll be the houses, and then there'll be their rear yard, some sort of buffer fencing, and then an open green space that will be partially for the leach field for the rest of the site, and then yet another layer of landscaping, and then the parking lot, and then the building. So we're building layers of depth to the site, so it's not just going to be a big green field to see parking in the building. So I don't think it's not captured here. We didn't render, the full we don't have a landscape plan. We didn't render all that out. We didn't put in the houses in these perspectives, but once it's developed further, I think we'll have sufficient buffer just with what's proposed.
And I think it's important to point out that distance between Main Street and that parking lot is several hundred feet. I don't know exactly, but it's a good distance.
I like the way it's set up where the seminary building really stands out. It's a lot taller. And of course, the building that you propose looks like it's the same height as the Swayze Gymnasium. And I think that's pretty good. Looks like a lot of clouds in the sky. Looks nice.
When do you break ground? Thought I'd ask.
I hope he likes my jokes.
I think so.
Probably
I think
does.
you're all set.
Most of us do.
Absolutely. Well, I guess from our perspective, we know that there's a lot of process in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important that if you folks are okay with this massing, which then we have a couple, hurdles to overcome with the selectmen on the 79E thing, but we feel confident that we can make that work. We have, if we get a sense tonight, or if you folks say this massing works for us, and we know we have this density, then we are going to proceed with the closing tomorrow and take title to the property. So that's scheduled
Tomorrow.
for 3 o'clock tomorrow, if we get your vote
Yeah.
or blessing, whatever.
Yeah.
I know it's not a public
Yeah, we won't
hearing.
vote, but we'll.
But if we know that this is something that you folks can support, based on the terms of our agreement with the town, and I think the warrant article that was a couple of years ago, that we have to close in this calendar year, we plan to close tomorrow if you are okay with this massing and the 6 home sites. And then we will navigate the 790 questions with the select board following.
Okay. So, does anyone have any more questions?
Don't forget to invite the public to speak.
I will, yes.
I like the campus, the houses that go along Main Street. I like that it's putting it back to the campus feel. I thought I was gonna like these colors, not really happy with the colors. But that's the easiest thing to change, so that's not a big deal. I think we're on the right track.
Ellie?
I've been pretty supportive of this project right along, and I still feel, I do like the way that building, by dropping the floor and putting a split on the back, I think it really gives it a much cleaner look. And since I own property on Church Street, although not as in a butter, I like the idea of those condo units in the back end. I think that's going to look nice on Church Street side. So I'm definitely supportive of this project, or this rendering, I should say.
Yeah. Glenn?
I'm supportive of it as well. I like the adjustments that have been made. I think the reduction in the height of the building that will replace what was the science building fits much better. The scale and scope and all of that, I think, is better. I do like the addition of the single
Yeah,
dwelling
I think
units.
it's a really nice touch, I really do.
As you said, Virginia, there were buildings in the place where the ones on Main Street are proposed, and, you know, it would help to revive that streetscape in the village district, if you will. And, of course, the design of those buildings and the look and feel of them would be something that we'd be reviewing in the formal application.
Right.
We would probably expect to be seeing something that would be in concert with other single-family homes along the district.
Sure.
But I really like the campus feel of it, and rather than having that open area by having the homes along the street and a couple in the back, I think it's a nice addition. And I know that, you know, a big part of the reason that you folks are doing it is that it helps your numbers work, which is obviously to your benefit, and will help the project be successful. So I think it's a win-win.
And you know, it's really to the town's benefit as well, because if we had, you know, originally the town looked at buying the property directly from the school district, and even though we own half the district, it got messy, it got really messy, and where would we have come up with the funds to develop it properly? Which would have been another, whole other hurdle to encompass, so that's why this project is really a great opportunity. I think it's a win-win for all parties involved, for the school district, for the Chinbrook properties, and for the town of Kingston. I think it's gonna be a great addition.
Ask Ralph. Ralph, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I haven't really paid attention driving by there, but, adjacent to the Swayze gym or in front, isn't there a tennis court there or something?
There is right now, yes. Yeah.
Is that going to be, taken by?
That'd be part of the property.
It's gonna be gone.
It's gonna be done, okay. I'm okay with it, I was just curious.
Yeah.
It's a liability now.
It's gonna be where one of those
Yeah, I don't
proposed
even think it's
buildings is.
Yeah.
being used. Okay, good.
Stanley, do you have anything?
I have another question. I see the single-family houses there. Are those gonna be like a typical townhouse, where you have everything downstairs and the bedrooms upstairs?
These would read really just like a single-family home on its own lot, but because the subdivision regulations wouldn't allow that, it'll just, they would look like, you know, we would find some single-family homes like Colonial or Cape or whatever that fits in. So it would look just like a regular single-family home, not a townhouse.
If you remember some of the old buildings, they were just white clapboard, two-story buildings.
They're all the same size?
Yeah, exactly. We could buy them, yeah.
So, would a condo arrangement work? Can you call these condos with them separate? Is that a possibility?
Well,
It's going to be worked out.
it has to be worked out, and it would be done as part of the site plan review process, but I'm assuming that these would be rented just as the units.
Well, actually, what we could do is, I would envision this as a 7 or 8 unit condominium project. The seminary is a condominium unit. New building is a condominium unit. Maybe the gymnasium, whatever, and then the 6 homes. So if it's a condominium unit, you can either master lease the big buildings, which we would own as condominiums, or you could sell them. So we would propose to sell the single-family condos and not rent them.
Okay.
So I have a question about that, because I have the nightmare of like little tarp shacks and bikes and, you know, messy little sheds, and stuff like that, so.
That would be all covered in the condominium
Condo
documents.
association rules.
Yep.
Okay.
Which
that-
are very robust. Obviously, we do a lot of that work and those pretty tight, so.
Yeah. It's
Nice.
too, because we plan to retain the condo that is the seminary building and the new building.
Okay.
And it's in our interest, or anybody who owns the mothership, which are the large buildings, to make sure that the satellites don't destroy the
have
envelope.
10 houses
That
in
would
their
be-
yard.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
And no roosters either.
I don't even care about roosters. I just want that house in front.
No roosters.
So the land would be a sort of common area, and then under or in and around each of the individual units, it would be a limited common area.
Okay.
So we will create boxes around each home that is for them to plant flowers and tomatoes and mow the grass.
Mhm.
But outside that, the larger areas would be maintained by the association.
Nice.
So that's,
That makes it simple.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And it matches the
Clean.
street.
this is a minor thing, and
Yeah.
I don't wanna talk about it a lot now, I just wanna propose the thought. It's clear that on Main Street, those homes, there were breaks in the fence and curb cuts where we're showing those homes. Over on Church Street, one of those homes logically faces Church Street and might logically have a driveway to Church Street, which would require modifying the fence just to create an opening. We, in this draft, kept the fence sort of sacrosanct, but as far as having things face the street and create the campus behind, we would probably ask that we create a driveway cut for that one that faces Church Street.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you have that house facing Church Street. We'd like them to face the main street. Virginia, yes?
Well, no, I was just gonna say, I think that's an important discussion of, that it's possible to do this, because if we say we like it, but you couldn't do it as a whole condo, plan, that would be very good, so I'm glad to hear how that would play out. And it could be done that way. Are you planning to keep the fence all the way around the property?
The historic fence, absolutely. Yeah. And one other comment, when we do have the conversation with the select board about 79E, which is really, really vital to the
Yes.
project, we will say to them that our plan is to sell these 6 homes as condominiums, and they would immediately go on the tax rolls. So those would not be part of what we propose or protected for the tax relief under 79E.
Okay.
So whoever buys those condominiums would be regular people buying a single-family home, and they're gonna pay their regular taxes.
Okay.
So
Good to know.
that's something that we hope will, because if we get through this step, you folks are gonna have to recommend to the 79E people that this is a good deal. And,
Mhm.
we think that's an important benefit of the new plan.
Yeah, we, as well as the Heritage Commission, need to supply a letter to the select board indicating it's spelled out exactly what we need to do.
Yep.
We just want to make sure it's legal. That's the only thing we want, make sure that what we do is legal. I understand that. And it will be. And it will be. We'll make it work.
Does anyone from this board have any more comments or questions?
No,
Does anyone from the public wish to speak? Do you want us to just say that we are behind you on this?
sure, we would love that.
We don't need to vote or anything, right? We've
Well,
all,
I think the minutes reflect that already.
The comments have been great, so,
I don't think there's really been anything negative at this point.
right.
No,
well, then, thank you for that, and we will proceed to purchase the property tomorrow. And, then we'll start rolling up our sleeves and doing real site planning. And, this board in Heritage, as was just suggested, will need to do
We're on,
a
yeah.
recommendation for
We're on that.
79E.
Yep.
And, then we'll be in front of the select board with a revised 79E application.
And then will they come right back to us after it's all said and done? We're the first ones that they
Yep.
see back?
Yep.
Okay.
The,
So we'll need-
the official plan, if you will, the final, whatever you plan to propose for the site, would come here first.
So it comes here first, and that would mean that we would need all the nitpicky details and all of the designs of the houses.
So does drainage and house design, everything come here before planning board?
Not
Not
so much drainage.
but anything that's
So we pick some home design.
Architectural design.
the physical look and feel of the property is all done here.
But the nuts and bolts are all at the planning board.
Things like
Septic,
parking,
sewage, parking,
Septic.
Coverage.
Lighting.
With the asterisk being, because this is the HDC zone, you guys have authority over height.
We-
So we
yes,
have to wait
yes,
for you guys
correct.
over height.
Yes.
Which would typically be zoning or planning.
So when you come here for our certificate of approval, or your certificate of approval from this board, I'm assuming that because it's in the specific HDC regs, the height, that waiver would be requested here and granted
Yep.
here.
So our application to this board would be essentially renderings that we've provided here for the new building and accompanying ones for the new houses. And just like another revision to this site plan, and maybe some more landscaping, is that?
They'll want to, we need to know the type of siding you're gonna put on,
Right.
that type of thing.
Yeah.
Lighting, fixtures, am I correct, Liz?
Yes, yep.
These guys are the gurus of that stuff.
I mean, it's certainly, well, just as an example, when the assisted living facility came to town, when they came to this board, which they had to first, because it's HDC, they came to this board with essentially the fully engineered plans, but the pieces of it that we reviewed and looked at were the things that fall under the purview of this commission.
Okay.
But they came with essentially the full plan so that we could see what was going on.
Okay.
Yeah, that does.
And then that same plan set, with whatever modifications were done as a result of the action here, will carry forward the plan.
Okay.
That includes signage. That would be for here as well.
Lighting.
Sign.
Lighting,
Yep.
Dark sky compliant.
Dark sky compliant.
Okay.
And all of our ordinances and stuff are right online, so if you have any questions, or just call me, and I'll help you as much as I can, answering questions or pointing you to people who can. Like Virginia, she knows a lot more than I do.
the non-abutter.
Glenn, when they're putting their plan together, they're not, we go through everything, they're not gonna get to the planning board and you're gonna say, you have too many units, they're like a density thing, that's not,
No.
that won't, there's no density issues here? Okay.
No, there isn't, because, well, partly because HDC is its own zone.
Okay.
Years ago, there was an underlying zone of rural residential, or I forget, maybe, whatever.
Right,
So you end up having conflicting layers. And some number of years ago, the town changed that. Whereas Historic District 2 does have an underlying zone, so it's a different animal, but HD1 is its own zone, and by virtue of the ordinance that describes it, gives a lot of flexibility over how you lay things out.
And the fact that 79E also comes into play because it's number of units, all that's already
Okay.
decided.
good,
So
all right.
once they develop the renderings, that's it, that's where it goes.
I just didn't want you to create something and then go to the next board and say, oh, it's, your septic's too big, or you
No.
don't have whatever.
No.
When we come, there might be some asterisks, because clearly when we're designing an 80-unit big building, we're gonna have it all planned and picked to the T, same with whatever goes on to the seminary. But when we do these 6 homes, we might seek to say something like, this is typical, and this home will have 1 of 4 different light fixture selections, only because you get different buyers that say, can I have the beige siding and not the white, or the shutters and not the whatever? So I don't know if that's possible, but we'll be asking for something like that. If we fit this palette on the 6 homes, here's the light fixtures that are approved, here's the whatever, it will provide a lot better nimbleness and flexibility as the marketplace dictates what we do.
Right.
So, or maybe it's an administrative thing, we go to you guys quickly and say, hey, this house showed that it was, the colonial and not the townhouse style, or the New Englander style, but we want to ship that one. So I guess I would hope that
Yes.
there's some flexibility on that.
We're so easy to work with.
Yeah. Well, we
We're not. We're so picky. But yeah, but I know what you mean. That sounds like it would. That sounds like it would be. Yeah.
And then we've got a palette to choose from, and then we have a little flexibility
Yes.
as we talk to different buyers.
Mhm.
And then maybe before we sign the contract, we would come and shoot it to you in an email and say,
Right.
we think this meets the palette on lot number 3, is this okay?
Right.
So.
The problem with that though is that we only meet once a month and we really don't do business via email as a board. You know, we don't vote online or anything. We just can't. It's illegal. So
Which is why like 2 or 3 design choices, options would be the
that
best
would be
thing.
better for us to
We
do.
might be able to creatively say, here's the limited common area,
Yeah.
buildable box of each of these 6 things. Here's 4 or 5 model plans that will fit on each of these.
Right.
And here is the exterior lighting package on trim, color, and
Right.
clapboard style. And then if we could have the flexibility to create that from the
Yeah,
palette.
for one of these
choices.
4 or 5.
Yes, yes.
That sounds like that would
That
work.
would work, that would work.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think for me, it would end up depending on what those options look like.
Right,
Yeah.
so you would approve the palette,
Right.
and then we would choose the various parts.
Or
to
the
go.
prospective buyer would, they would do this,
That's right.
this, and that, and
Yeah.
out of that approved lot.
Right.
Then,
Yeah.
then you don't have to go back and forth.
Yeah, and worst case is we have to like send an email to Susan and then say, can we meet you for 10 minutes to say?
Yes, and we've done
why
that
this
before.
Meets the intent of what you
Yeah.
approved, so.
We've
Okay.
definitely met halfway through the month for a special quick meeting, just to help, you know, with new construction, we've helped.
Okay.
That
Well,
way.
if we crafted correctly in the beginning, where you folks were really happy with the options,
Yeah.
then it should be, that we wouldn't have to do a mid-month meeting.
Right.
So-
Yes.
Right.
One other thing that I had written down before you go is just that, I had a question about the parking lots that Stanley was mentioning. There is a section in 904 of the ordinance.
It's the site plan review.
So that would come under planning
Come under
board.
planning.
Okay.
Which one would?
The parking.
Mitigating the impacts of
So number
parking.
spaces as well as landscaping related to parking, that sort of thing, that would fall under planning board's purview.
Right. So if you come with a plan and you've got a bunch of trees and stuff, I mean, that really would fall more to the planning board.
With the proviso though, that when it comes here, hopefully you would have looked at that regulation and done the plan so that you showed that you were trying to meet that requirement.
Because in the site plan regs, the planning board looks at their landscaping requirements.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we were to see them here, just to get a feel for it, and
Yeah.
if there were any comments that we wanted to make on it that would go along with the planning board,
Right. Okay.
that might be helpful.
Another thought, Glenn was saying, for example, when All-American Assisted Living came, they pretty much had what was going to then go forward to the planning board with any changes, including drainage. So I can think of cases in which there was a plan set and oops, the drainage didn't work, we're gonna have to make a change, which would make a physical appearance change. And that's why having things like drainage and so forth as well established as you possibly can.
So you don't have to come back.
Definitely would be our goal, especially with you being on both boards, right? You can advise us, you know, and so we'll want to work out the drainage and the leach field. I mean, leach field is going to govern a lot, and it's probably going to be raised up a little bit and have to be, you know, not be the most beautiful thing in the world, and so we'll have to do something about that.
And you'll have that what we call the swimming pool in front of the tennis courts.
Well, that we can get rid of, but we might have to have like,
That would be really
it might
nice.
be a bit of a mountain. So.
Or instead of a hole, it's
And
gonna
we
be
might
built.
ask you
And that's
to
all
try
right.
to disguise that, you know, or,
Well, the size, unfortunately, we can't control, but we can control how to put some extra trees around it. or
Right, right.
whatever. So,
yes.
Landscaping, yeah.
Glenn.
One other resource, Eric, is for you, would be our town planner, Glenn Greenwood. You should really feel free to run, issues by him too, because he's the advisor to the planning board primarily, but he does support.
He
the other
he
boards.
advises us too.
So-
Okay.
And that way, he's a staff person, so, you can get into questions with him that the board members here, or on the other board for that matter, really shouldn't be getting into that detail outside of the public hearing process. So it's a resource for you.
Great.
Excellent.
Alright.
Good luck tomorrow.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks
Thank you
very much for coming back. The second thing on our agenda is actually the letter, the 79E letter that we have to write. And Ernie, you want to come up to the hot seat? Ernie told me last night that he has crafted a draft from the Heritage Commission. And we have to, we asked Glenn Greenwood last night if there needed to be a letter from us and a letter from them, and he seemed to think that if both of these boards were in agreement, we could send them the one letter with it wouldn't be, that would be fine with me, and if it's better to do two separate letters, that's fine with me as well.
Well, I think you should draft a letter that's gonna go to the board, but that may change, because it's my understanding that some of the things I talked with Rich Wilson this morning, and some of the things that you talked about last night may not work financially in the scheme for Mr. Chimber because of how it's worded in science versus the tall building, the seminary building. So you might have a preliminary letter, but that may be subject to change, because when Mr. Chimber said that he'll work it out with the select board, that's exactly what it means. But it means we need you guys to work with us too, so that we meet the intent and the letter of the law, and also allow Mr. Chimber the flexibility that he needs to proceed with the process.
Right.
But the letter, and I'm sure we're going to get into this, is really more just indicating that doing a replacement instead of renovation of a structure is an okay thing to do for these reasons.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's really all the letter is.
Okay.
But taking your
No,
side now.
that's about.
Have we encapsulated what the issues are?
Yeah, there are three issues that need to be addressed by the Heritage Commission and the Historic District Commission. One of them is, does the buildings being demolished have significant historical, cultural, or architectural value?
You want me to answer that?
Not yet.
Well, let's go to the Heritage Commission. So that's number one.
Okay.
Let's see. Another one is whether or not the new the replacement building will meet one of the public benefits that are outlined in the RSA. And those are things like helping to increase the development of the downtown, economics of the downtown area, or provide housing in the area in which it is. And so I think that is probably easy enough to figure out.
Yeah.
And then the third one is whether or not the replacement building will have some kind of a negative aspect, so to speak, on the district in which it's developed. And those are the three things that need to be in that letter from the Heritage Commission and the HDC.
Okay.
And that sort of motherhood and apple pie really doesn't affect the discussions
It does not.
that the select board's going to have with regard to the
That's correct.
to the tax relief.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can craft a letter from the HDC agreeing that, or stating that we don't believe that the science building has significant historic cultural value. What was the third one? Architectural.
Yeah, the qualifying structure does not possess significant historical, cultural, or architectural value.
That it will benefit, number two, it will benefit the public because of housing. And
Well,
bringing more. What?
Actually, the public benefit section, there are at least two, maybe three that it fits. It fits number one, I believe, by enhancing the economic vitality of the downtown.
We're definitely gonna make you write the letter.
He's really
Well,
good
I thought
at that.
I think you should.
I thought Ernie had the letter.
We're just gonna put our name on Ernie's letter.
That it promotes development of municipal centers, and that it increases residential housing
Yeah,
in
it
the
does all
downtown.
The wording right in the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
79E.
Nice.
So,
I'm assuming your letter talks about those.
Yeah, it does. It's a draft, but it talks.
so first of all, shouldn't we vote on whether we do agree on that?
Yes, we're still discussing it, but
Okay.
we can vote on that. Do we all agree? Are we all on the same page? Yes?
Yes,
Yes.
Is that a yes? Yeah.
yes.
Is this a vote?
Well, I don't know, but nobody's made a motion, but.
Should I be
Well-
voting on this? I mean, because I'm also gonna vote on this on the selectmen's.
You're not voting on this letter, you're gonna be voting on things related to the tax relief, the 79E application.
Right.
It's different.
Okay.
And your role on this board
Different.
is different.
And I can do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, just when because I'm gonna
Just want to make
vote
sure that
twice.
we're all on the same page, that, you know, if anyone has anything more to add or a disagreement, then now's the time to speak. I'm getting the feeling that we're all on the same page, but if I'm wrong, then you guys need to tell me.
So
what
how
you're talking
about if I make a motion,
Okay,
and then we can, in discussion, see where we go with it?
okay, perfect.
So I'll make a motion that the Historic District Commission provide a letter to the Board of Selectmen, responding to RSA 79E. It's all ready to go. Now I mix them up. Oh, Lord. Here we go. (79E:4), number 4, referring to in cases of redevelopment. So, this is awful. Now I'm off track from the motion. Who's doing minutes?
Marissa,
Recording.
Oh my God, poor Marissa. Maybe I should
start it
start.
over again.
Maybe I should start again.
Yeah.
Sure.
Take two.
Take 2. Make a motion that the Historic District Commission provide a letter to the Board of Selectmen supporting the replacement of what was the science building on the seminary property. And did I already say provide a letter? I did say provide a letter. Including a statement that the existing, or the former existing is the existing structure, the science building,
What's left of it?
right, does not possess significant historical, cultural, or architectural value, and that the replacement structure will provide public benefit per RSA 79E:7 in the following ways. That it will enhance the economic vitality of the downtown, which is our village center. That it will promote development of our downtown core, if you will, and that it will increase residential housing stock in the town center.
And thirdly, that the new building will not have a negative impact.
Correct. That.
That. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Madeline. All in favor?
So,
Aye.
wait,
Oh,
we
oh,
need to have
discussion.
So the one, it's okay, Ellie, it won't be too long. You should have been at planning board.
No,
she-
you do not.
no.
So the negative impact I see is that we haven't discussed traffic at all. So this is going to make a big difference in the amount of traffic on all the streets around it. Main Street, Church Street, Chase Street, there's gonna be a lot more traffic.
Yeah.
To me, that's a negative. How do you grow the center of town without more traffic? I guess you can't. So I just want to say that that's one of the aspects that we discussed when there was a large project, Hannaford, way back, Rite Aid, then Hannaford, now All-American. Traffic was an issue. This isn't business traffic in that it doesn't have to have a certain number of customers coming all the time. But it's still a lot of units. I think it's gonna be about 100 units by the time you're done, plus the homes.
Well, I need to rebut that.
Okay,
You know, I need to rebut that because for 100 years, that was a high school. And we had 1,500 kids up there, 1,000 kids. How many cars? 500 cars in and out 2-3 times a day. I don't think we're gonna have anywhere near the traffic impact we had when the school was operating as a high school.
okay, so that's a
That's my
good,
opinion.
okay, and that's a good perspective I hadn't thought of, Ally, but I wanted to talk about traffic.
I totally agree. Even if we took the old high school out of the mix, if you've got 70 units and predominantly 1 or 2 bedrooms, the most you're gonna have is maybe 100 cars, if that much. So is it gonna be in and out? No, it would have been with Hannaford, there might have been a lot more impact, but it hasn't been with All American.
No, it has not.
It has not. But I don't think we're gonna have I don't think it's gonna be as much traffic as we used to have when the kids were coming in and out of there, especially at 2:15. Never mind when we had double sessions for all those years, and we had school from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. without the sports programs. So that's,
So that's a good perspective, I hadn't thought of that.
I don't think it's gonna be as challenging, and you're gonna have two sides, because you're gonna have some traffic flowing out onto Church Street and some going onto Main Street, so you're not everybody's gonna be leaving at the same time. It's not like an office.
Maybe just 1 or 2 cars.
Well, you'll have some in the morning going off to work, but you may not even really notice the flow any different than we have now.
I agree with Ally. I was gonna say the same thing, that we have the high school kids, they would all come in and they would all leave.
Oh my God.
You know, and that and the school buses and all that, so
Yeah.
I think it's gonna
Be
be.
a lot less traffic, I think.
Glenn?
I think that what this is looking at, though, is comparing the replacement structure to the existing structure, and by removing the old one and putting a new one in, does that have a negative effect? I think what you've jumped to is the
The
overall
project.
site development.
When we get to that.
When we
right.
get to that in the
Yeah.
public hearing and the review process,
Yeah,
things
that's
like
true.
traffic and everything, that
Okay.
discussion. So unless, and maybe you can weigh in on this, Ernie, but the way I would view this is really, what we're doing is providing input related to
The project.
That's-
the replacement
that
of the existing
structure
building with a new
itself.
building.
Right.
And
Okay.
does that have a negative effect on them?
Good, good, thank you.
So now we need to vote.
Now we vote.
Yes.
Any more discussion? All in favor of Glenn's motion that he made half an hour ago? Aye.
Aye.
Now that we're clear on it.
Any opposed?
Maybe we're clear.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
Great.
you're gonna are we asking, is Susan gonna craft the letter?
I'll craft a letter, yeah. I'll just copy
With
what Ernie
Ernie.
wrote.
Ernie's.
I'll reword it. Do you have yours all done now, or is it still a draft? Your letter, the Heritage Commission's letter, is that,
It's not done, I mean, it's the draft that I showed you, but other than that,
Okay.
there's still a little bit that needs to be added.
I see.
But
Mine
did the
will-
Heritage Commission have the same feeling that we are having here?
Yeah, basically, we went over generally and what, in the interest of time, we talked about generally what aspects were, and they made a motion to have Debbie and I draft up the final letter to go out, based on the rationale that was presented at the meetings.
Good, perfect. And then those letters have to get to the Board of Selectmen ASAP, is that true?
Ideally, I mean, I don't, we don't have a meeting next week. The following week is a department head, so it'll be the 1st of January. But I know we'll want to speak with Eric to review it anyway.
Okay.
What our part, not your part, but what the final numbers would be.
We'll probably want those letters before you meet with them.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So I'll get it.
So whenever that
We want
is.
that done, so you guys, as soon as you get it into us, we'll take action on it.
Will you be meeting with them before the end of the year, do you think?
Was Mr. Chandler? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I'd be surprised if we did, because it's only
2
next
weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
We've only got 2
Right.
weeks. And maybe we will, but I don't, we as a board are not officially meeting other than the department heads on the
Oh.
27th.
Oh,
We
okay.
have no meeting next week.
Oh,
There are no meetings next week with anybody.
party time.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's catching breath time, because the following week we'll have the department heads on the 27th of December, which is Monday morning, which will be finalizing money stuff, budget.
Yeah.
And then on the 30th, we have any encumbrance day, so anything that gets encumbered before the final year end. So that's the only 2 meetings we have. So I don't anticipate meeting in full session till January.
Excellent.
I'm
Does
excited.
the public want to comment before we close our meeting? Anyone have any? Yes, Ernie?
I just wanted to mention that the Heritage Commission signed up the town to have a membership in the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. They're a national organization dealing with, preservation on a community level. They allow all of the members of these organizations, HDC and Heritage Commission, to be named as members of that organization. And one of the benefits of that is that they have a number of resources available to commissions like ours, to where some of them are training resources. Most of them are paid. You have to pay, but there are training resources. They have they call it a listserv or a Google group, I guess, which you can participate in, which allows you to ask questions of practitioners from all over the country who are members of the organization, and they respond to you with answers, opinions, and those kinds of things, if you want to do that kind of thing. They have an extensive technical library of studies, articles, all of those kinds of things that you also have access to as a member. So it's a really good organization. They do a lot of work on training and providing information on design guidelines and things of that nature, which probably is more of a benefit to you guys than maybe to the Heritage Commission. And so the town is a member of what, and if individuals want to avail themselves of those resources that they have, you just have to, I have to give them the name and email address of those persons who want to be a part of it. So, Susan, if you can, through your group, decide who wants to be a member, and everybody can be a member, if you can decide who is interested in it, and then just send me the name
Okay.
and email addresses, and I'll send those in, and then we can go ahead and avail ourselves of those resources.
Thank you.
Great.
Yes.
Do I need to present my name and address?
Yep, come on up.
Maybe you need to come up with.
For the record.
Sure. Dan Doyle, 156 Main Street.
Okay.
Will consideration be given with 91 units going in? And I imagine a lot of the families here will probably be younger families, putting in an engineered crosswalk going into Bacon.
Good question.
Because with bus traffic, parent drop off in the mornings and afternoons, it gets hectic out there. And I think you maybe really want to consider some type of sidewalk going from the new Chimber property to Bacon, so no one's hurt crossing the road. Just a thought.
When we initially spoke with him, sorry, I can't talk and write, so wait just 1 second. When we initially spoke with him last month, I asked him about the impact on schools, and he said that, of all the units that he owns and rents, well, maybe you could actually answer this. Didn't Eric say that there are very few families that rent that have children?
Few children, like,
Right.
it's really remarkable how few children rent, or like how few children are in rental apartments these days. You have order of magnitudes more dogs than.
Because they're not, this is televised,
Sure.
they're not going to be able to hear you.
Oh, you better
I don't have exact numbers.
say
but
your name again so that.
I'll get with Chimber Properties. I don't have exact numbers, but we have very, very few children on our properties, and the impact to school systems is negligible. applicable.
Right. I think they talked about that when he was here prior
Yes.
to this.
Yeah.
So
I wrote down 12 children in 1,600 apartments.
there you go. That sounds about right. I mean, I've been in a few buildings and I've never seen a single child at all, which is
It's,
kind of
it's
wild.
predominantly studio in one bedroom, which really limits the number of children.
But it only takes one child to get rid of
I don't disagree with
I
you.
agree.
Yeah.
The other thing, thank you,
Yeah.
Paul. The other thing I was just thinking about was that right now with school drop-off and pickup at Bakey, aren't they stacking all the cars through the seminary
Yeah.
property, right? So that'll have to,
I can't speak for the school district, but that's a problem we're gonna have to resolve eventually.
yes, well, yeah, the school district will have to come up with a plan
Right.
for where they're gonna stack up their waiting parents.
So let's hope it's not closing bacon.
Yeah. No, anyone else have anything?
Eleanor, I think, had her hand up.
Hi, come on up. State your name for the record for the minutes, please.
I'm in Clifford, New Boston Road. Your talk, even though it's kind of preliminary, reminded me of the development you put next to me. And I was concerned about traffic. And it actually didn't turn out as bad. There's only 42 units, but it wasn't bad as I thought.
Okay.
I was concerned. And the other, so it was interesting. And the other thing is sidewalks. Like that development was not allowed to have sidewalks. And I was wondering if that had been, would be part of the plan. Because you're twice as many people. And a lot of people, even people in the area, come around and walk around the development next to me. And the residents themselves walk. It's
Oh.
obviously set up a little
So like a
different.
paved walking trail is what you're talking about, or
Well, I
just
don't know,
paved
just say
trails
people walking
between-
the road.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Well,
And you have a lot of parking places, and it's like, would they walk, even though you specifically mentioned kids going to school, like, it's hard to see here. But I just noticed, I was just wondering in general, when it was interesting, Dan mentioned sidewalks too.
If you remember in Vision Kingston too, that was one of the long-range plans, was to have a walking site, if you will, sidewalk around the plains, loop around the seminary property back down Church Street. So that's in the future, that's a lot of vision.
And there was even talk about bringing the sidewalk down to Bakey in anticipation of the redevelopment of the seminary site.
But so there's two issues. One, within the area itself,
That's correct.
because again, the development next to me is probably set up differently than this. But, and it has parking. There is no big, huge parking area like this plan had, because it's a whole different, the buildings are
That was different.
separate.
Yeah, there were separate individuals.
Several, two to four two or four units to a building. So, there's no like big main parking, but, just a thought, it must be somewhere in the scheme of
I'm
things.
sure it's.
probably
gonna
on the
be
site,
like-
I would think on the site plan
Yeah.
development, the walking areas would be
And
on that.
at planning board, it'll probably get discussed, but I mean, when it's here, I mean, there's nothing to say that it can't get discussed here as well.
Right.
And perhaps with a recommendation for when it gets in plan.
And another big issue was the streetlights.
Oh.
They have they put in little tiny streetlights around the thing, but, Kingston at one point, when they put the street light near the railroad tracks, it was a big deal. Kingston has very few streetlights.
Well, this individual developments like this,
Need lights.
will have lighting. And part of when it gets to planning board and site plan, there will be a whole separate sheet in the plan set that will be a lighting plan.
And we always speak up about lighting.
So there will be lighting.
No question. No question.
I'm sorry. Cautious.
No, I'm sorry, it's close enough.
Start to lead.
Well, if that's it, then I think we're done for the evening.
Well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
Happy
I
holidays.
officially adjourn us at 8:15 p.m.
Declaring us adjourned.
Yes.
Merry Christmas to everyone.